Un ganadero dejó sagrado apache, 13 años después, la tribu apareció en su puerta. Jose had always been a man of the land. His ranch stretched across a quiet valley, surrounded by rolling hills and dense forests that seemed to touch the sky. The sun rose gently over the horizon each morning, painting the landscape with soft golden light, and the smell of fresh earth and grazing cattle filled the air. Life on the ranch was not easy, but it was honest work, and Jose took pride in caring for his land and animals. Each day was filled with routine, feeding the cattle, mending fences, tending the fields, and keeping watch over the rolling pastures that had been in his family for generations. One crisp autumn morning, Jose decided to explore a part of his land he had rarely visited. A winding path led him deep into a small forest, where the trees grew close together and sunlight barely touched the forest floor. It was quiet there, almost eerily so, with only the sound of leaves rustling in the wind and birds calling from high branches. He had walked this path before, but that day felt different, as if the forest itself was waiting to reveal something hidden. As he wandered, Jose's boot caught on something hard beneath the fallen leaves. He bent down to investigate and uncovered a small, weathered box, half buried in the soil. Curiosity sparked in his chest. Carefully, he brushed away the dirt and opened it. Inside lay a small golden object, intricate in design and unlike anything he had ever seen. The object gleamed in the morning light, despite the years it had been hidden. It was beautifully carved with symbols that seemed to tell a story, though Jose could not understand the language or meaning. For a moment, Jose felt a strange mix of excitement and awe. He had heard stories about the sacred gold of the Apache people from local historians and elders, but he had never imagined encountering it himself. The object was delicate yet strong, and holding it in his hands felt like touching a piece of history. Jose wondered about the hands that had crafted it, the people who had cherished it, and the purpose it had once served. He felt a sudden weight of responsibility, as though the artifact had chosen him to keep it safe. Over the next few days, Jose could not stop thinking about the golden object. He cleaned it gently and examined every detail, noticing patterns and carvings that seemed to glow under the sunlight. Every night he placed it on a small wooden shelf in his home, careful to keep it hidden from prying eyes. Friends and neighbors were curious about his discoveries in the forest, but Jose remained silent. He knew that some things were too precious to share casually. Seeking answers, Jose visited the local historian, Señor Martinez, a man well known for his knowledge of indigenous cultures and history. Martinez examined the object with great interest, turning it over in his hands and squinting at the intricate carvings. After a long pause, he spoke softly. "This is not ordinary gold, Jose. This could be a sacred item of the Apache people. Items like this were used in rituals and held deep spiritual meaning. It is very rare to find one that has survived this long." Jose listened carefully, feeling a mixture of pride and worry. He did not want to disrespect the item or the people to whom it belonged. Martinez continued, "If this is indeed Apache gold, it carries a responsibility. These objects are not just treasures, they are part of a culture, a history, and a way of life. They should not be sold, traded, or hidden forever. They must be treated with honor." The words weighed heavily on Jose. He had grown attached to the object, not because of its value, but because of the story it represented. He felt a deep connection to the past, to people he had never met but whose lives had shaped the land he now called home. He knew that keeping the object safe was important, but he also felt the pull of doing what was right. Days turned into weeks, and Jose continued his routine, but now his mind often wandered to thoughts of the Apache people. Who were they? How had the object ended up on his land? What stories did it carry? These questions filled him with a sense of wonder and respect. He began reading books about the history of the Apache, learning about their traditions, their struggles, and the sacred items they had treasured for generations. One evening, as Jose sat by the fireplace, he carefully held the golden object in his hands. The firelight danced across its surface, highlighting the intricate carvings. He whispered softly, as if the object could hear him, "I will keep you safe. One day, I hope I can return you to the people you belong to." It was a promise he made quietly, but with a sincerity that came from the heart. Despite his busy life on the ranch, Jose felt a growing sense of anticipation. He imagined the day when the artifact would be returned to its rightful owners. Until then, he treated it with the utmost care, placing it in a wooden box lined with soft cloth whenever he was not holding it. The presence of the gold became a silent companion, a reminder of the responsibility and honor he now carried. Over time, Jose noticed subtle changes in himself. The discovery had awakened a sense of connection to history and culture that he had never experienced before. He became more patient, more thoughtful, and more aware of the world beyond his ranch. Even his work with the cattle and land took on new meaning. Every sunrise seemed brighter, every sound in the forest more meaningful, and every moment felt intertwined with the story of the past. Friends and neighbors occasionally asked about his contemplative mood, but Jose simply smiled. Some things, he knew, could not be explained. Some stories had to be felt rather than spoken. And so he continued his life on the ranch, carrying the sacred object with quiet reverence, unaware that this small discovery would one day bring visitors from a world he had only begun to understand, a world connected to him by history, trust, and the passage of time. As the months passed, Jose remained vigilant, ensuring the golden object was always safe. He even built a small hidden compartment in his home to protect it from damage. Yet, he never treated it as a possession. Instead, he treated it as a guest, a keeper of stories, and a bridge between his world and the world of the Apache. Each day, he felt more connected to the land and its history, realizing that life often presented opportunities that were both rare and humbling. The discovery of the sacred gold marked the beginning of a new chapter in Jose's life. It was a chapter filled with respect, curiosity, and quiet wonder. It was a chapter that would eventually lead to an extraordinary encounter, one that would test his values, deepen his understanding of human connection, and forever change his life. But for now, Jose lived each day with the silent knowledge that he was a guardian of something ancient and precious, carrying a promise that time alone would the years passed quietly on Jose's ranch. The golden object he had found so many years ago remained safely hidden, a constant presence in his life, though it was never discussed with anyone. Life on the ranch had a rhythm that required patience, care, and attention, and Jose continued his work with unwavering dedication. He woke with the sun, fed his cattle, mended fences, and tended to the fields as he had done for years. Yet, underneath the surface of ordinary work, a quiet curiosity about the sacred gold never left him. Even though the object remained safely tucked away, Jose found himself thinking about it often. He imagined the people who had created it, their lives, their beliefs, and the rituals in which the gold might have been used. He wondered how it had ended up buried in the forest near his home. Each thought filled him with a sense of wonder and respect, as if the gold had connected him to a story much larger than himself. The object had become more than just a piece of history. It had become a silent teacher, reminding him that some things in life were meant to be preserved, respected, and honored. Despite these thoughts, the world around Jose continued in its usual flow. Seasons changed, bringing with them the usual challenges of ranch life. Summers were hot and dry, with the sun beating down on the pastures, forcing him to spend long hours ensuring his cattle had enough water and shade. Winters were cold, with frost covering the fields and snow sometimes blanketing the land, making even simple chores more difficult. Through all these changes, Jose maintained his routine, his life anchored in the work he loved and the land he had inherited. Sometimes, however, the quiet of the ranch was interrupted by small reminders of the past. Visitors from the nearby town would mention old stories about the Apache, their sacred artifacts, and the legends that had been passed down through generations. Jose listened politely but never revealed his secret. He had made a promise to himself and, in a way, to the object itself. He would protect it, but he would wait for the right moment to act. This sense of responsibility weighed on him, not as a burden but as a guiding principle in his life. Over time, Jose also noticed subtle changes in the land around him. The forest where he had found the gold seemed different in the quiet moments before dawn. Birds called from places he had never seen before, and the wind carried scents and sounds that reminded him of something ancient. Sometimes he would walk through the forest and feel as if he were being watched, not in fear, but with the sense that the land itself acknowledged the presence of something sacred. It was a feeling he could not explain, yet it was both comforting and humbling. As the years continued, Jose began to think more about the idea of returning the gold. He had done extensive reading on Apache culture, learning about their traditions, rituals, and the spiritual significance of sacred objects. The more he learned, the more he understood the depth of respect that was owed to the artifact. It was not just a piece of history, it was a symbol of a people, a culture, and a belief system that had survived centuries. Jose knew that returning it to the Apache was the right thing to do, but he also knew that finding the correct way to do so would require patience and care. In the meantime, Jose continued to live his life fully, balancing work, reflection, and quiet contemplation. He spent evenings by the fireplace, holding the golden object in his hands and imagining the stories it could tell. He thought about the hands that had crafted it, the ceremonies it had been part of, and the people who had once held it with reverence. These thoughts became a kind of meditation, grounding him and reminding him that life was connected across time, through people, land, and the objects they cherished. Even his interactions with others began to reflect the changes within him. Jose became more patient with his neighbors, more thoughtful in his decisions, and more aware of the world around him. He listened carefully when people spoke of history or culture, asking questions and learning from those who had knowledge he did not possess. The golden object had quietly changed him, not through magic or power, but through the responsibility and respect it demanded. He had become a guardian of something far greater than himself, and this knowledge shaped his character in subtle but meaningful ways. Jose also began to notice the curiosity of the younger generation in the area. Children from nearby farms would often wander close to his property, asking questions about the land, the animals, and the forest. Jose welcomed their visits, teaching them about ranch life, the importance of caring for nature, and the value of patience. Though he did not speak of the golden artifact, the lessons it had inspired in him flowed naturally into his guidance. He encouraged them to respect history, to honor traditions, and to understand that every object, every place, and every story had meaning beyond what was immediately visible. Through all these years, Jose never lost his sense of wonder. The golden object remained a symbol of mystery, history, and connection. He often imagined the day when he would meet the Apache people and return it to them. That day, he felt, would be a moment of profound significance, a bridge between the past and the present. Until then, he nurtured the object with care, ensuring it remained safe from harm and honoring the promise he had made to himself so many years ago. As the 13th year approached since he had discovered the gold, Jose began to sense subtle changes in the environment around him. It was not dramatic or frightening, but small, almost imperceptible signs that something important was approaching. The forest seemed more alive than before. Animals behaved differently, sometimes appearing unusually calm, other times restless. There were sounds he had never heard, faint echoes that seemed almost like distant voices. Jose could not explain these occurrences, but he felt them deeply, as though the land itself was trying to communicate something he needed to understand. Jose also noticed changes in his own perception. He became more attentive to small details in the landscape, more sensitive to the rhythms of nature, and more aware of the passage of time. Even ordinary events like the movement of clouds across the sky or the gentle ripple of a stream seemed filled with meaning. He felt that he was part of something much larger, a story that extended beyond his own life, beyond his ranch, and into the history of the land itself. Despite these feelings, life on the ranch continued as always. Jose worked tirelessly, maintaining the pastures, feeding the cattle, and caring for the land he loved. Yet beneath the surface of ordinary life, anticipation grew quietly, like a seed waiting to bloom. The golden object remained safely hidden, its presence a reminder of the promise he had made and the journey that lay ahead. In these years of silent anticipation, Jose learned patience, humility, and respect. He understood that life often moved slowly, that great events were rare, and that some things were meant to be discovered only when the time was right. He also learned the value of responsibility, of caring for something larger than himself, and of honoring the trust placed in him by fate and history. And so, Jose continued his life, quietly tending his ranch, reflecting on the past, and preparing for the moment when the story of the golden object would continue. He had learned that some treasures are not measured by their material value, but by the lessons they teach, the connections they inspire, and the way they shape the people who guard them. The sacred gold had quietly transformed his life, and he knew, deep in his heart, that it would one day lead to an encounter that would change everything. The morning of the 13th year since Jose had discovered the golden object began like any other. The sun rose slowly over the valley, spilling soft light across the rolling fields and the forest beyond. The cattle grazed peacefully, the wind whispered through the trees, and the air carried the familiar scent of earth and grass. Yet Jose felt a strange tension beneath the calm. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but it grew steadily as he moved about the ranch. While tending the cattle, Jose noticed that they were restless. The usual calm, contented herd was uneasy, shifting nervously and staring toward the forest that bordered the property. Horses whinnied unexpectedly, and even the farm dogs, normally playful and carefree, seemed alert and watchful. Jose paused, squinting toward the tree line, but saw nothing unusual. Still, he felt the change in the air, a quiet energy that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. Days went by with these strange occurrences, small but persistent. At first, Jose thought he might be imagining them, a trick of the mind after so many years of caring for the sacred gold. But then, more unusual signs appeared. Footprints in the soft earth around the forest edge did not match those of his cattle or his own. They were small, deliberate, and moved with a rhythm that seemed almost ceremonial. Jose knelt to examine them, noting the careful placement of each step, as if whoever had walked there was performing a ritual of some kind. At night, strange sounds began to echo across the valley. It was not the wind, nor the calls of animals, but a low, rhythmic chanting, distant yet distinct. It came in patterns, rising and falling with the natural sounds of the land. Jose sat by his fireplace, the golden object resting on the small shelf nearby, and listened carefully. His heart beat faster as the sounds repeated night after night. He could not understand the words, but there was an unmistakable sense of purpose behind them, a connection to something ancient and sacred. The forest seemed alive in new ways. Birds flew in unusual formations, and small animals scurried nervously through the undergrowth. Jose often felt a strange sensation, as though unseen eyes were watching him, following his movements. He could not explain it, yet he felt no fear, only a growing sense of anticipation, as if the land and the golden object were preparing him for something important. One afternoon, Jose decided to investigate further. He walked slowly into the forest, carrying only a small satchel with essentials. The forest was dense, and sunlight barely penetrated the canopy, casting long shadows on the forest floor. He followed the faint trail of footprints he had noticed earlier, careful not to disturb the evidence of whoever had been there. With each step, the chanting seemed to grow fainter, almost as if it were guiding him rather than drawing him in. Jose discovered a small clearing, untouched and serene. In the center, the earth was slightly disturbed, as though someone had been there recently. Tiny symbols were etched into the soil, intricate patterns that mirrored, in some ways, the carvings on the golden object. Jose knelt down, tracing the shapes with his fingers. A shiver ran through him. These signs were deliberate, meaningful, and connected to the artifact he had safeguarded for so many years. That evening, Jose could not sleep. He lay awake, staring at the golden object on its shelf, the firelight casting dancing shadows across the room. Thoughts raced through his mind. Who had left the signs? Why now after all these years? And what did they want from him? He felt a deep respect for whoever was approaching, a recognition that this was no ordinary encounter. Something larger than himself was unfolding, and he sensed that the moment he had long anticipated was drawing near. The next morning, he awoke to find more unusual signs. The footprints were closer to his home now, and small gifts, stones arranged carefully, feathers laid out with precision, appeared at the forest edge. Jose recognized them as symbols of respect, even reverence. He realized that the visitors were preparing for a proper meeting, following traditions that had been passed down for generations. It was a profound realization, and Jose felt a mixture of awe, humility, and nervous excitement. As the days went by, the forest seemed to communicate in subtle ways. Birds would sing in a particular pattern when he approached the golden object. The wind carried whispers that sounded almost like distant voices, speaking in a language he could not understand but somehow recognized as welcoming. Even the cattle responded differently, calm and attentive when he moved toward the forest, uneasy when he stayed inside. It was as if every part of the land knew what was coming, and every creature sensed the sacred importance of the moment. Jose began to prepare for the visitors in his own way. He cleaned the ranch meticulously, tending to the fields and ensuring that his home was in order. He gathered food and water, thinking not only of hospitality but of respect. He placed the golden object in a safe but visible place, feeling the weight of responsibility heavier than ever before. This was no longer just about keeping it safe. This was about honoring the connection between himself, the artifact, and the people it belonged to. Despite his preparations, Jose felt nervous. He had imagined this moment many times over the years, but imagining it was very different from experiencing it. He wondered what they would look like, how they would speak, and whether he could convey the respect and sincerity he felt. Would they understand his care for the object? Would they forgive the years it had been away from them? These questions swirled in his mind, but he found comfort in the knowledge that he had done nothing to harm the artifact. He had kept it safe, and he had waited patiently for the right moment. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Jose noticed movement at the edge of the forest. Shadows shifted and figures appeared, moving with quiet grace. He could see their outlines clearly against the fading light. There was no fear in them, only a calm, purposeful approach. Jose felt his heart quicken. He took a deep breath, stepped forward, and greeted them with a nod of respect, knowing instinctively that this was the beginning of an encounter that would change his life forever. The chanting that had echoed through the valley for weeks grew louder as the figures approached. Jose noticed the careful, deliberate movements of each individual, the way they carried themselves with reverence and dignity. Their eyes, when they met his, held a mixture of curiosity and recognition, as if they understood who he was and what he had done. It was a moment of profound connection, a meeting of past and present, human and sacred. Jose felt a deep sense of peace. The anticipation that had built over years, the subtle signs and omens, the quiet messages from the land, all of it had led to this precise moment. He understood, in a way that transcended words, that the golden object had been a bridge, guiding him toward this encounter and preparing him to fulfill his role as a guardian. He realized that life often worked in mysterious ways, and that patience, respect, and integrity were rewarded in ways that could not always be predicted. As the figures came closer, Jose prepared to step fully into this new chapter of his life. The sacred gold rested in his hands, and the forest around him seemed to hold its breath. The journey that had begun 13 years ago with a chance discovery in a quiet forest was reaching its turning point. Jose felt ready, filled with reverence, humility, and a quiet excitement. He knew that the story of the artifact was about to continue, carried forward by the people to whom it belonged and the guardian who had protected it with unwavering care. The morning air was crisp and still, carrying a quiet sense of anticipation across Jose's ranch. He had slept little, though it was not due to fear or restlessness. His mind was filled with thoughts of what was about to happen, the moment he had quietly waited for over 13 years. The golden object rested in a small, soft-lined wooden box, safely tucked under his arm as he walked toward the forest's edge. There was a reverence in his step, a careful mindfulness that reflected the importance of this day. From a distance, Jose could see the first figures emerging from the tree line. They moved gracefully, deliberately, almost as if the land itself was guiding them forward. There were men, women, and children, all dressed in simple, traditional attire, their movements precise yet relaxed. Their presence radiated a quiet dignity, a calm authority that immediately commanded respect. Jose felt both nervous and honored. After all these years, the moment had finally arrived to meet the people to whom the sacred gold belonged. As the group approached, the low, rhythmic chanting that had echoed through the valley for weeks grew louder. The sound was not threatening or aggressive. It was welcoming, ceremonial, and filled with meaning that Jose could not fully understand. Each step the visitors took seemed measured and intentional, as if they were honoring the land, the moment, and the golden object he carried. Jose stopped in the middle of the clearing, holding the wooden box carefully in his hands. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that he hoped would be understood. One of the elders, an older man with a gentle yet commanding presence, stepped forward. His eyes were clear and bright, reflecting both wisdom and kindness. He raised a hand in greeting, and Jose instinctively mirrored the gesture. Though they did not speak the same language, the understanding between them was immediate. Words were not always necessary to convey respect, sincerity, and purpose. The elder gestured toward the golden object in Jose's hands, and Jose slowly opened the wooden box. The artifact gleamed softly in the morning light, the intricate carvings catching the sun's rays. He extended it toward the elder with both hands, his heart pounding in his chest. The elder's eyes widened slightly as he looked at the object, and a quiet murmur of approval rippled through the group. Jose felt a wave of relief and humility wash over him. He had safeguarded this treasure for over a decade, and now it was finally returning to its rightful owners. The elder carefully took the golden object, cradling it with both hands. Jose watched as the elder examined it, his touch gentle, respectful, and reverent. The group gathered around, forming a semicircle, and each person took a moment to bow or nod toward the artifact, acknowledging its importance. Jose felt a profound sense of connection, as if he were witnessing not only the return of a sacred object, but also the restoration of trust, honor, and history. The elder then spoke, slowly and deliberately, in a language José could not understand. Though he did not know the words, the tone conveyed gratitude, respect, and recognition. He gestured toward José, and José bowed again, acknowledging the significance of the moment. The group responded with nods and murmurs, their expressions warm and welcoming. It was clear that they understood the care José had taken in safeguarding the gold, and their approval filled him with pride and humility. As the ceremony continued, José observed the traditions being honored. Small offerings of feathers, stones, and carefully arranged plants were placed around the clearing. The visitors moved with deliberate, graceful motions, their actions filled with meaning and reverence. José realized that he was witnessing a living history, a culture that had preserved its identity and spiritual practices despite the passage of time. He felt privileged to be part of this moment, even in a small way, and he understood that his role as a guardian had been crucial in bringing this reunion to life. Children from the group approached José cautiously, curious about the man who had kept the artifact safe for so many years. José smiled gently at them, feeling a warm connection despite the differences in language and culture. He offered them small gestures of friendship, a nod, a smile, and a quiet presence that conveyed respect and goodwill. The children, in turn, observed him with wide eyes, sensing the importance of the golden object and the extraordinary moment unfolding before them. The elder continued to speak, and José felt a deep sense of peace. He understood that the artifact's journey had come full circle. It had been lost, discovered, safeguarded, and now returned. In that moment, time seemed to stretch and fold, connecting the past, present, and future in a single, profound experience. The golden object was no longer just a piece of history. It was a symbol of connection, trust, and the enduring power of respect for culture and tradition. As the ceremony drew to a close, the elder raised the golden object toward the sky, a gesture that seemed to honor both the ancestors who had created it and the present moment in which it had been restored. José bowed deeply, feeling a mixture of awe, humility, and fulfillment. He had never imagined that a single discovery in the forest would lead to such a meaningful encounter, nor that he would be entrusted with the responsibility of safeguarding something so sacred for over a decade. The tribe then gathered in a circle, performing a final ritual that included rhythmic drumming, chanting, and the careful placement of small symbolic items. José stood at the edge of the circle, observing respectfully. Though he did not understand every gesture, he felt the deep spiritual significance of each action. The golden object had returned to its home, and José had played a vital role in ensuring its safe journey. It was a lesson in patience, integrity, and the importance of honoring what belongs to others. After the ceremony, the elder approached José once more. This time, he spoke slowly in a mix of Spanish and gestures, conveying gratitude that transcended words. He expressed thanks not only for returning the artifact, but also for the care, respect, and patience José had shown over the years. José felt a lump in his throat. He had acted out of a sense of responsibility, but the acknowledgement from the tribe made him realize the profound impact of his actions. The group then invited José to share a meal with them. They sat together under the trees, passing food and water, sharing simple gestures of companionship. José felt a deep sense of belonging, even as an outsider. He listened to their stories, observed their customs, and felt honored to witness the living traditions of a culture that had endured for centuries. Every detail, from the way they spoke, moved, and interacted to the care they took with each ritual, filled him with respect and admiration. As the day drew to a close, José walked with the elder to the edge of the forest, where the golden object had been carefully returned to a specially prepared resting place. The elder placed it down with reverence, covered with a soft cloth and surrounded by natural offerings. José felt a sense of closure, knowing that the artifact was safe and respected in the hands of the people to whom it truly belonged. The tribe then prepared to leave, moving back into the forest with the same quiet grace with which they had arrived. They waved and nodded at Jose, leaving him with a feeling of connection that would stay with him forever. He watched as they disappeared into the trees, the sunlight filtering through the branches, casting long, warm shadows across the valley. The sacred gold had returned home, and Jose's role as a guardian had come to a meaningful conclusion. As the sun set behind the hills, Jose stood alone in the clearing. The air was filled with a peaceful silence, broken only by the gentle rustling of leaves in the wind. He reflected on the journey that had brought him here, the discovery of the artifact, the years of care and patience, the signs and omens that had prepared him for this moment, and the extraordinary encounter with the tribe. He realized that this experience had changed him profoundly, teaching him lessons about respect, integrity, and the enduring power of human connection. Jose returned to his ranch that evening with a heart full of gratitude. He continued his work, tending to his cattle and land, but the memory of the day remained vivid and alive. The sacred gold had returned to its rightful place, and with it came a sense of fulfillment, wisdom, and deep respect for traditions that transcended time. The experience had shown him that small actions, guided by care and integrity, could create ripples that reached far beyond one's own life, connecting past, present, and future in meaningful ways. After the tribe had returned to the forest and the golden artifact had found its rightful place, Jose stood alone in the clearing, the warm glow of the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the valley. The air was quiet, filled only with the gentle rustling of leaves and the soft sounds of wildlife returning to their routine. A deep sense of peace settled over him, yet his mind was alive with reflection. He realized that the experience had changed him profoundly, shaping not only the way he viewed the world but also the way he understood himself and his connection to others. Walking back to his ranch, Jose felt a mixture of relief, pride, and humility. The artifact that had once been a mysterious treasure now rested safely with the people to whom it truly belonged. He had fulfilled the promise he had made to himself 13 years earlier, a promise to protect and eventually return something sacred. It was not an easy journey. It had required patience, dedication, and quiet vigilance. Yet the reward was immeasurable, a bond formed with a living culture, and the knowledge that he had acted with integrity and respect. As he reached his home, Jose paused to look over his fields. The valley seemed somehow brighter, the colors richer, the air filled with a subtle energy he had never noticed before. The land itself seemed to recognize the completion of this long journey, as if it were relieved that the sacred gold had been returned. Jose felt a deep gratitude for the life he had, for the land he cared for, and for the extraordinary experience that had intertwined his story with that of the Apache tribe. Over the following days, life on the ranch returned to its familiar rhythms. Jose continued his work with the cattle, repaired fences, and tended the pastures, but everything felt subtly different. He approached each task with a heightened sense of awareness and purpose. Every sunrise and sunset seemed more meaningful, every sound of the forest more profound, every moment infused with the memory of the connection he had witnessed. It was as if the experience had taught him to see the world through a lens of respect, patience, and understanding. Jose also found himself reflecting often on the values the tribe had shared with him, even without words. The rituals, the careful handling of the artifact, the gestures of respect and gratitude, all of it carried lessons that Jose could apply to his own life. He realized that integrity was not just about doing what was legally or morally correct, but about honoring trust, culture, and history. He understood that patience, even when it seemed tedious or unnecessary, could lead to extraordinary outcomes. and he recognized that respect for others, regardless of differences in culture or background, was a principle that could bridge worlds. One evening, as he sat by the fireplace with the ranch quiet around him, Jose thought about the children he had seen with the tribe, their curious eyes watching every movement, their questions filled with wonder and learning. He understood that these young people were the future keepers of culture, history, and tradition. Their awareness and respect for the sacred were a reminder that knowledge and values could be passed down through generations, preserved, and honored even in a changing world. Jose felt a sense of hope that extended beyond his own life, a belief that the lessons he had witnessed would continue to influence others long after he was gone. In the weeks that followed, Jose began to notice small, subtle signs of the tribe's continued presence, though they were never intrusive. Feathers appeared on the paths leading into the forest, carefully placed stones marked trails, and sometimes he heard the distant, gentle hum of familiar chants carried by the wind. These signs were not demands or requests, they were acknowledgments, gestures of gratitude and ongoing connection. Jose understood them as quiet reminders that relationships, respect, and trust did not end with a single encounter. They were nurtured and maintained through care and attention. Jose also found himself sharing his story with others in the nearby towns and villages, though always carefully and respectfully. He did not reveal all details, especially those of sacred rituals or symbols, but he spoke about the importance of patience, integrity, and honoring the property and beliefs of others. His story became an inspiration, a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary experiences are hidden in ordinary lives, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. People who listened to Jose were captivated not by the gold itself, but by the lessons it represented, lessons of trust, responsibility, and human connection. The golden artifact had returned to the tribe, but its impact on Jose's life remained enduring. He found himself more connected to the land, more attentive to the needs of his animals, and more thoughtful in his interactions with neighbors and friends. Even ordinary tasks took on a deeper meaning, as if the land and life itself carried echoes of the sacred. He understood now that every act of care, every decision guided by respect and patience, contributed to a larger story, a story that connected people, history, and culture in ways that were both visible and invisible. Jose also began to see the spiritual dimension of his life more clearly. Though he had always believed in the importance of respect and honesty, the encounter with the tribe revealed a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. He realized that life was not simply a series of daily routines, but a network of relationships, responsibilities, and legacies. Every action mattered, no matter how small, and every choice had the potential to ripple outward, affecting others and shaping the future. This awareness gave him a sense of purpose, guiding him in both work and life, and instilling a quiet confidence in his own ability to act with integrity. As time went on, Jose occasionally returned to the forest, standing at the edge of the clearing where the sacred gold had been returned. He did not go to disturb the artifact, nor to seek recognition, but simply to reflect and give thanks. The forest had been both witness and guide in his journey, and Jose felt a profound gratitude for its silent support. The land, the tribe, and the artifact had all contributed to a life lesson that he would carry forever, a lesson in humility, honor, and the extraordinary power of connection. Jose also began to document his experiences, writing down the story in simple words so that it could be remembered and shared with future generations. He focused not on the treasure itself, but on the values and lessons it represented. He described the anticipation, the signs, the arrival of the tribe, and the profound sense of peace that followed the return of the artifact. His writings became a personal guide, a reminder of the journey and the wisdom he had gained, and a source of inspiration for anyone who might read them one day. In the evenings, Jose often sat outside, watching the sun set behind the hills, reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a single discovery in the forest. He thought about the hands that had created the golden artifact, the people who had treasured it, and the long path it had traveled before reaching him. He felt honored to have been part of its story, humbled by the trust placed in him, and grateful for the lessons it had taught him. The encounter with the Apache tribe had changed Jose in ways he could never have imagined. It had taught him that life's true treasures were not measured in gold or possessions, but in trust, respect, and the connections we form with others. It had shown him the importance of patience, the power of integrity, and the enduring significance of honoring history and culture. And it had reminded him that every person, every choice, and every act of care had the potential to create ripples that extended far beyond what could be seen. As Jose lay down to rest each night, he felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. The sacred gold had returned to its rightful home, the tribe had been honored, and his role as a guardian had been completed. Yet, he knew that the lessons he had learned would continue to guide him every day. He had become more than a rancher. He had become a keeper of wisdom, a witness to history, and a participant in a story far greater than himself. In the end, Jose realized that life often presented opportunities to act with courage, integrity, and respect, even when the outcome was uncertain. These opportunities might seem small or ordinary at first, but they could lead to extraordinary experiences, profound lessons, and connections that lasted a lifetime. The sacred gold had not only returned home, it had transformed Jose, leaving him with wisdom, humility, and a deep understanding of the value of patience, respect, and human connection. And so, life on the ranch continued. The sun rose and set, the seasons changed, and Jose tended to his land and animals with renewed purpose. Yet in his heart, the memory of that extraordinary encounter remained alive, a guiding light that reminded him every day of the beauty, importance, and responsibility of living with honor. He understood that true treasure was not gold, but the lessons we learn, the trust we honor, and the connections we nurture. And with that understanding, Jose faced each day with gratitude, reverence, and the quiet joy of knowing that he had been part of something truly extraordinary one day fulfill.